For about 10 seconds, I thought the people at the window table were standing up to agree with him. The manager had pointed at the door and told me to leave. He said it twice. The second time he added that paying customers were uncomfortable, which was a careful way of saying, I look like something you step over on a sidewalk. My coffee hadn't been touched. I'd paid for it in exact change. So when the woman at that table pushed her chair back, I got my coat over my arm and made ready to go quietly, because that is what you do. Then the man beside her stood, then two more, then all 12, and not one of them was looking at the manager. They were looking at me. Their plates were full, every single one. In the middle of the table lay a folded flag with a photograph face down beside it. Sir, the woman said, you may not remember us. We remember you, the man said. I didn't know their faces. I want to be honest about that, but I knew the date. I'd known it since I opened my eyes that morning, and I'd spent 22 years pretending it was an ordinary Tuesday. I got up at 5, same as every day. There's no reason for a man of 69 to be awake at 5 when nobody is waiting on him, but the body keeps its own appointments long after the reason for them is gone. The house was cold. I don't run the furnace past March. I stood at the kitchen window with my hands around a cup and watched the light come up over the Kowalski's garage across the alley, and I did not look at the calendar because I didn't have to. Some dates live under the skin. You feel them the way an old brake feels weather. April 9th, I shaved. That took longer than it used to, on account of my hands. I put on the gray shirt, and over it the coat. The coat is the part everyone wants to talk about now, so let me get it said. It's a wool car coat, charcoal, 3 buttons, and it was expensive once. Marion bought it for me the Christmas before she got sick, and she made a whole production out of it because I'd worn the same field jacket for 11 years, and she said a man ought to own one thing that wasn't olive drab. That coat is 19 years old. The right cuff is worn through to the lining and the hem sags where I've carried too much in the pockets. It is clean. I want that understood. I wash what I can wash, and I brush what I can't, and it is clean, and it is old. And to a stranger, those two facts add up to whatever the stranger already believes. I walked. It's a mile and a half from my street to 3rd and Warren, and I've made that walk on the 9th of April every year since Marion died, and for 11 years before that with her beside me complaining about her shoes. Halloran sits on the corner there. Brick, green awning, a hand-painted sign that's been repainted so many times the letters have gotten fat. Ed Halloran's father opened it. It's the kind of place where the coffee is nothing special and they never stop filling it. I got there a little after 1, later than usual. My knee had opinions that morning, and I'd stopped twice on the way. Once on the bench outside the credit union, and once for no reason at all, just standing at the corner of Warren letting people go around me. Dana was working the front. She's a small woman, maybe 30, with a voice that carries and a way of putting a hand on the back of a chair when she talks to you. She's been there 4 years. She knows I take the 2 top by the kitchen door, the one nobody wants because of the noise and the swinging traffic, and she knows I like it because from there, I can see the whole room without anybody being behind me. She's never once asked why. You're late, Mr. Hale, she said. Slept in, I said, which was a lie, and she knew it, and she let me have it. I sat down and put my hands flat on the table until they settled. Coffee and a slice of the cherry pie. $3.40. I counted it out of my front pocket onto the table before she brought any of it, in coins and 2 singles, squared up in a little stack beside the napkin dispenser. I have done that in every restaurant I've entered since 1984. It isn't about the money. It's so that no person working in that building ever has to spend 1 second wondering whether I'm good for it. Dana poured. Steam came up off it. I remember thinking the cup was too hot to drink yet and setting it down, and that was the last decision I got to make on my own that afternoon. The new manager had been there 3 weeks. Kyle Brenner, 38 or so, blue shirt, sleeves rolled 2 turns, a tablet under his arm that he carried everywhere, the way some men carry a clipboard, so nobody asked them to lift anything. Ed Halloran had brought him in from a chain place out by the interstate because Ed is 76 and tired, and his knees are worse than mine, and somebody had told him the answer was fresh management. Brenner wasn't a cruel man. I've thought about that a great deal since, and I keep landing in the same place. He was a frightened one. He'd been handed a room that was half empty on a Tuesday and told to make it look like somewhere people would want to be. And he had gone through that dining room in 3 weeks like a man clearing brush, and I imagine when he looked at me, he did not see a person at all. He saw a problem with the atmosphere. I felt him looking. You develop a sense for it. Twice he came out from behind the register and found something to straighten that didn't need straightening, and both times he ended up angled toward my corner. A couple by the front window glanced over, then went back to their sandwiches. That was all it took, I think. He needed a reason, and their eyes gave him one. He set the tablet down on the counter. Dana saw him do it, and I watched her start toward him with the pot still in her hand, and I watched her stop. And as he came across that floor toward me, I looked past his shoulder at the long table by the window. 12 on Dana's chart. She'd called it that for 4 years, the way you'd say a street name. 12 people sat there over food nobody had touched. There were 13 chairs. The one on the end was empty. He stood over me with his hands behind his back, which is a thing they must teach somewhere. "Sir, can I help you with something?" "I've got a coffee coming," I said. "It's coming. She's already poured it." "Right." He looked at the money stacked by the napkins and did not seem to see it. "Sir, we've had a couple of complaints this week about people using the dining room as a place to sit." "What people?" "Sir." I asked which complaint, I said. "You said a couple. I'd like to know which one was about me." That was the wrong thing to say, and I knew it while I was saying it. Not because it wasn't fair, because it made him decide. His voice changed. It got flatter and a little louder, pitched to carry to the register, which is how you can tell a man is not talking to you anymore but to the room. "You need to leave. Now." I sat there a second. The cup was between my hands, and it was still too hot to drink, and I remember being aware of that, of the small, ridiculous fact of it, the way your mind grabs onto something harmless when the rest of it is going under. "I paid for that," I said. "You can have your money back." "I don't want my money back. I want the coffee. I'll drink it, and I'll go." "Sir." He was already stepping aside to make a lane for me, one arm out toward the door. The way you show a dog which way is out. Paying customers are uncomfortable. That word, paying. Sitting 18 inches from $3.40 in nickels and dimes I'd counted onto that table before I ordered. Now, here's the thing everybody assumes, and everybody has it backwards. I wasn't angry. I've been angry. I know what it is. This wasn't it. What I felt was something older and quieter, and it had a shape I recognized, because it is the same shape every time. It's the feeling of the ground going soft under a thing you thought you'd earned. You are a man who pays his own way and irons his own shirt, and hasn't asked a soul for anything in 11 years. And then a stranger looks at your cuffs for a second and a half and tells you what you are. And the terrible part, the part that keeps you awake, is that a piece of you agrees with him. Because I did look like that. I'd stopped at 2 benches. I hadn't trimmed the beard since Sunday. And I live alone. And when you live alone, there is nobody to tell you the coat has gone. Dana came around the end of the counter fast. Kyle, he's a regular. He's been coming in here since before I started. He comes every. Donna. That was all he said. Her name, one word, in the voice a man uses when he is holding your paycheck. She stopped. She stood there with the pot in her hand and her mouth open and her eyes filling, and I watched a young woman with a kid at home do arithmetic in about 1 second flat, and I wanted on the record that I did not blame her, not then and not now. "It's all right," I told her, "Dana. Look at me. It's all right." It was not all right. But she had years left in that building, and I had 1.5 miles of sidewalk, and there was no reason both of us should pay. So I did what I have always done. I stood up. I took my coat off the back of the chair and folded it over my arm instead of putting it on, because putting it on takes a while, and I didn't want to give anybody a show. I left the money where it was. I made sure the chair was pushed in square under the table, which is a stupid thing to think about, and I thought about it. I said, "Sorry for the trouble." I have said that sentence my whole life. I said it to a man who had just thrown me out of a restaurant for wearing a 19-year-old coat. I said it because if I did not say something ordinary, I was going to say something else. And a man my age does not get to say the other thing and still walk out under his own power. Nobody in that room moved. 40 people, give or take. Tuesday lunch. Fork stop, that's all. A whole room full of decent human beings turned into furniture, and I have never held it against a single one of them, because I know exactly what it feels like to be sure that someone else is about to speak up. I got 2 steps toward the door, and behind me, at the long table by the window, a chair leg scraped on the tile. She stood up slow. That's the part I keep. Not the 12 of them, later. The one, first, and how slow she did it. She folded her napkin in half and set it down next to a plate she had not touched, and she smoothed it flat with 2 fingers, and only then did she straighten up. 30 years old, maybe? Dark hair pulled back, a gray cardigan with the sleeves pushed up. Nothing about her said anything at all, which is why I misread it. I thought she was leaving. I thought she'd had enough of the scene and wanted her check. Then the man next to her put both hands on the table and pushed himself up. He was heavy through the shoulders, 40 or so, with a beard gone white on one side only. He didn't look at her when he did it. He didn't need to. Then a woman at the far end. Then two men across from her, one after the other, half a beat apart, like a rope coming taut down its length. There is a way people stand up when they have stood up together before. It isn't military, exactly. It's older than that. It's what a room of people does when the standing has already been decided somewhere and the bodies are just catching up. Chairs went back. Nobody scraped except the first one. 12 of them, on their feet, not one word. And every plate on that table was full. Roast beef, an open-faced sandwich, a bowl of soup with the spoon still lying across the saucer, all of it fresh and steaming and untouched, on a table where 13 chairs were set and 12 people were standing. In the middle, on the cloth, sat a triangle of folded flag in a wooden case, and beside it, a picture frame, face down. Kyle Brenner turned around. I watched it happen to him. He had his arm still half out toward the door, and he turned expecting, I think, a manager's problem. A party wanting the check. And what he found was 12 people standing in complete silence, looking past him, at me. Folks, he said, is everything all? Sir, the woman in the cardigan wasn't talking to him. You may not remember us. I looked at her. I looked down the line of them, and I felt the floor go out from under me for the second time in 90 seconds, because I was certain, absolutely certain, that I had never seen one of those faces in my life. We remember you, the heavy man said. His voice came apart on the second word. He didn't try to fix it. He stood there with his chin going and let it. I said, I think you've got the wrong fella. Nobody moved. Nobody corrected me. Then a man near the end of the table, tall, gray, in a windbreaker zipped to the throat, said one thing. Sergeant First Class Hale. 22 years. That's how long it had been since anybody put those words together in that order in a room I was standing in. Not since the armory, not since the last formation, not since I signed the paper and shook the hand and walked out into a parking lot in the rain and drove home to a woman who had already set the table. I want to tell you I stayed steady. I've told a lot of the truth so far and I'd rather not stop. I came to attention. Not all the way. Not so anybody would necessarily have caught it, but the heels went together and the shoulders came back and the coat slipped off my arm and I did not notice it hit the floor. And there is nothing you can do about that. Nothing, because the body hears its own name. The room heard it too. 40 people who had watched a shabby old man get thrown out of a restaurant watched him snap upright at a title, and you could feel the whole floor tilt. Brenner's face was doing something complicated. I'm sorry, he said. Do you people know this gentleman? Nobody answered him. He tried again, louder, because that's what a frightened man does. Sir, if there's some kind of alien, the woman in the cardigan said. The heavy man with the half-white beard wiped his face with the flat of his hand. Once, like he was annoyed at it. April 9th, he said. 22 years ago. Canal Road, North Side. You want to tell him, or you want me to? I don't know what you're talking about, I said, and I meant it. For about 4 seconds, I truly did not know. 22 years of not saying a thing out loud will do that. You don't forget it. You just move it somewhere and build over the top. And when someone opens the door, you stand there blinking at your own basement. Then the tall man in the windbreaker unzipped it part way and pulled the collar of his shirt down on the left side, and there was a burn scar across his collarbone, silver and rope thick, the kind that never lets you forget what direction the heat came from. And it came back the way those things come back. Not as a picture, as a smell. Vasquez, I said. The heavy man's mouth went. He nodded about 6 times fast. Yes, Sergeant. You were 19. I was 19. I looked down the table. 12 faces, and now that somebody had turned the lamp on, I could find the boys inside the men, the way you find a father's face in a son's. Prosser, Faraday, who could never keep a helmet strapped tight. The medic, Dupree, who was 30 then and is a grandmother twice over now, standing there with her hands folded in front of her like she was at a graveside. Kyle Brenner had gone very still. Who are you people, he said. And Charlene Dupree, without taking her eyes off me, answered him. We're the ones who wouldn't be here. Here's what I hadn't asked yet, and it's the question that mattered, and I was too far under to think of it. What were they doing in that room? 12 people in a family restaurant on 3rd and Warren on a Tuesday on the 9th of April, with a case flag on the table and 13 chairs set. It was Nora who told me, the woman in the cardigan. I still didn't know her name at that point in the afternoon. We meet every year, she said. 21 years now. This is 22. Where? The Armory mostly. 6th Street. We had it in the old drill hall. They'd let us set up tables. She stopped. They sold it in October. It's going to be storage units. I heard that, I said, because I had. And because it was easier to talk about a building. So we needed somewhere. She glanced back at the table, at the 12 places, at the food nobody had touched. Tom said here. The tall man in the windbreaker, Prosser, cleared his throat. January 18th, he said. Before we shipped, the whole company came in here after the family day. 50-some of us. They pushed all the tables together. The old man behind the counter wouldn't let anybody pay for the pie. Ed's father, I said. Was that his dad? Okay. Prosser nodded slowly. So, yeah, here. I stood in the middle of that floor with my coat around my ankles, and I did the arithmetic, and it would not come out. You've been meeting for 21 years, I said. Yes. On the 9th. Every year. And nobody I had to stop and start it again. Nobody ever told me. And that is when the young woman in the cardigan looked at me with something I could not read at all and said the quietest sentence anybody said in that building that day. Sergeant Hale, we wrote to you every single year. There is a post office box on Warren Street with my name on it, Box 411. I've had it since Marion got sick because we were in and out of Columbus for treatment, and I got tired of the mail piling up in a slot where anybody could see the house was empty. I kept it after. I keep it still. And for a lot of years, twice or 3 times a winter, there were envelopes in it addressed in different hands, some typed, one always in the same slanted ballpoint, all of them from people whose names I did not let myself read past. I did not open them. I'll be exact here, because this is where I stop being the man that things happen to and start being the man who did something. The first few I opened. That was the first 2 years. I read them standing at the counter in the post office lobby with my coat on, and I put them in the trash barrel by the door on my way out. And I drove home, and I did not tell Marion. And she found out anyway, the way she found out everything. After that, I stopped opening them. I'd hold one, and I'd know what it was by the weight, and I'd write return to sender across the front in pencil and put it back in the slot. I did that for 19 years. Marion used to answer them for a while, in secret, which I found out about after she died when I was going through the desk and found a shoebox of carbon copies, because that woman made a carbon copy of everything she ever wrote, including the note she left the milkman in 1978. She'd written to those people. She'd told them he's not ready. She'd told them he's ashamed and he can't say it. She'd told them keep writing. They kept writing. And when she was gone, there was nobody to answer. And I let the box fill up with pencil marks, and I told myself I was sparing them something. You want to know what I told myself? I'll tell you what I told myself, because it sounded reasonable for 2 decades, and it does not sound reasonable now. I told myself that a reunion is a thing for men who came home with everybody. I told myself that if 12 people wanted to stand in a room once a year and say a name, the name they ought to be saying was not mine. I told myself that showing up would be a kind of theft. And underneath all 3 of those, doing the real work, was the one I never said out loud, even in my own kitchen. That if I sat down at a table with those people and they thanked me, I would have to sit there and be thanked. And I did not think I could hold my face together while they did it. So instead, I walked 1.5 miles to Halloran's every 9th of April, and I sat at a 2-top by the kitchen door where I could see the room, and I drank 1 cup of coffee and ate 1 slice of cherry pie, alone, 60 feet from where I could have been sitting. 22 years I did that. And the year they finally moved the party to the only other building in this town that meant anything to any of us, I came in an hour late because my knee hurt, and a stranger in a blue shirt pointed at the door. Why? I said. It came out wrong. It came out hard, and Nora flinched, and I put my hand up. I'm asking why, I said softer. 21 years. What is it you think you're doing? Elian Vasquez answered. Sergeant, we can't do anything else. I didn't understand, and he saw it, and he leaned forward and put both fists on the table, and he wasn't crying anymore. He was something else. You went back in, he said. 12 of us came out of that road. Marcus Bell had a heart attack shoveling his driveway 4 winters ago, so it's 11 of us standing here, and his boy still sends a card. Every one of us has got people. I've got a wife, and I've got 2 daughters, and the older one has got a boy now. He stopped. He was working to get it out level. That's 5 people right there that only exist because of 90 seconds. Doc's got 3. Prosser's got 4 and 1 on the way in June. You add it up, Sergeant. There's 41 people in this county walking around today because of what you did on one night, and 30 of them never heard your name, and I am not able to just let that go. I've tried. I'm not able to." The restaurant was silent. Kyle Brenner had backed up until his hip was against the counter. I looked at the flag on the table, in its case, and at the picture frame lying on its face. "You've got that turned down," I said. "We turn it up at the end," Nora said. "After we eat, that's how we do it." "Whose is it?" And every one of those 12 people looked at the young woman in the gray cardigan. 22 years ago, on the 9th of April, an engineer platoon out of the armory on 6th Street got caught on a canal road at about 4 in the morning. I'm not going to do the whole thing. You can find better accounts than mine, and I'm suspicious of men my age who tell that kind of story with the sound effects in. I'll give you what you need. We were strung out in 4 vehicles. The second one went up. Whatever it was had been in the shoulder of that road maybe 2 hours, and it took the second vehicle off its wheels and put it into the ditch on the canal side, on its right, at an angle, with the fuel going. There were 13 people in the ditch that night between that truck and the one behind it. I was in the 4th vehicle. I got there, I don't know, a minute and a half. It was burning on the left side and along the top. The whole left side was gone. You couldn't get within 8 feet of it on the left. And when I say you couldn't, I mean the air itself was wrong. I mean it took your breath out and gave you nothing back. The right side had a door I could get to. I got it open. And I made a decision that took no time at all, less time than it takes to say it, which is the thing nobody tells you about the decisions that follow you. I went right. 12 people came out of the right side of that vehicle and the ditch behind it. Some of them I pulled and some of them I pushed, and 2 of them I never touched. They came out on their own with their gear on fire, and I got it off them. Vasquez was one of those. Dupree worked on people in that ditch for 40 minutes with a light in her teeth. Prosser I got by the collar, and I dislocated his shoulder doing it, and he thanked me for it later, which I have never known what to do with. 12 out of the right side. There was one man on the left, Specialist Aaron Kessler, 31 years old. He worked at the water treatment plant on Anders Road, and he had a daughter who was 5. I could hear him. I'll go slow here. For 22 years, I have told this to exactly one person, and she has been dead for 11 of them. I could hear him, and I went right anyway, and I have never once been able to prove to myself that it was because it was the only door I could reach. The fuel burned off around 6. It gets light early there in April. I was the one who brought him out. I wouldn't let anybody else do it, and nobody argued with me. He'd been on the wrong side of it, and I'm not going to describe him, and you don't want me to. His left cargo pocket had a button, and the button had held. Inside it was an envelope, sealed, stamped, addressed in pencil, scorched brown along one edge and not touched anywhere else. 4 pages folded around a photograph. I put it inside my shirt. I did not turn it in, and I did not tell one living soul. And 3 weeks later, on a Thursday, in a post office in Ohio, I dropped it in the slot with 3 lines of my own handwriting folded in behind his. That's the whole thing. That's what's been sitting in my chest since I was 47 years old. Not grief. I could have carried grief. People carry grief. It's the other thing. It's the not knowing whether the man you were that night was doing arithmetic or looking for the easier door, and there's no way to go back and check, and there's no court that will hear it, and there is no amount of walking a mile and a half in April that settles it. They gave me something for that night. A ribbon and a citation with my name spelled right. It's in a drawer in the spare room under a stack of Marion's patterns, and I have not looked at it since 2009. Because here is what a citation cannot do. It cannot say what the man on the left side heard. So when 12 people write you a letter every year to say thank you, and you know they are only 12 because there was a 13th, you write return to sender on the front and you put it back in the slot, and you tell yourself you're being decent. I stood in the middle of Halloran's and I said his name out loud for the first time in 22 years. That's Kessler's flag. Yes, sir, Nora said. Your family. Yes. And she reached down to the table and turned the picture frame face up, out of order, an hour before they were supposed to, and she held it up so I could see it. A young man in a gray plant uniform with his sleeves rolled, squinting into the sun, holding a little girl on his hip. She's got both arms around his neck, and she's got a plastic barrette in her hair shaped like a strawberry. I'm Nora, she said. I was 5. The room did not make a sound. I have to tell you something, she said. And I've had 22 years to figure out how to say it, and I never did figure it out, so I'm just going to say it badly. She put the frame down. She picked up her purse off the back of the chair, and she took out an envelope, soft at the corners, gone the color of weak tea, the kind of soft paper only gets from being handled 10,000 times. 3 weeks after the funeral, she said, "This came to my mother's house. No return address. Somebody had put a stamp on it and mailed it from Ohio." She turned it over in her hands. "It's 4 pages. It's my dad's handwriting. It's dated the 6th, and it says the mail was slow and he was going to hold on to it till he could get a picture put in with it, and there's a picture in it, and it's this one." She touched the frame with 2 fingers. "It says the thing every kid wants a letter from their father to say. It says he'd be home before my birthday. He wasn't. That's not the part." She looked up. "The part is that there was a second sheet of paper in that envelope, in a different hand, and it wasn't signed. 3 lines. It said, this was in his left cargo pocket. It said, it is not damaged. It said, I'm sorry." Everything in me went cold. "He carried it out," she said. "Whoever he was. Somebody stood on that road with the worst thing he was ever going to see in front of him and thought about a kid he had never met, and then mailed it to her and never signed his name. Nobody in that restaurant breathed. I've been looking for that man since I was 19 years old," Nora Kessler said. "I found these people. They took me in. They set my dad a chair every year. And every year I asked them. And every year they told me. And every year we wrote to a post office box on Warren Street. And every year the letters came back." She was crying now. She wasn't doing anything about it. "I want to say this in front of everybody, because you have not let anyone say it to you in private in 22 years. She came around the end of the table. "You didn't fail my father. I said something. I don't know what it was. It wasn't words. You gave me the last 4 pages of him," she said. 11 of the people standing behind me are only standing because of you. I'm not one of them. I'm the one you saved nothing for. I'm the one you owe nothing to. And I am telling you that of everything that came off that road, the thing I have needed most in my whole life ended up in my hands 3 weeks later because somebody thought of a 5-year-old on the worst morning of his life." She stopped in front of me. She was a foot shorter than me, and she looked straight up. "I don't blame you. Nobody at that table blames you. My mother didn't blame you, and she's been gone 6 years. You are the only person left who blames you, and I have been trying to get you a letter for 22 years to tell you to quit. I have been to 2 funerals where I did not cry, and I cried in a restaurant on 3rd and Warren in front of 40 strangers. I am 69 years old, and I put both hands over my face, standing up, in the middle of a dining room, and Elian Vasquez came around that table and got hold of me by the shoulders like you'd catch something falling off a shelf. It's a strange thing to hear a room change its mind, because it does make a noise. It's chairs, mostly. It's 40 people who have been holding still for 4 minutes deciding all at once that they are allowed to move. The couple by the front window, the ones whose glance had started the whole thing, the woman stood up with her napkin still in her hand. A man at the counter in a utility company jacket got off his stool and stayed standing, and didn't seem to know what to do next, so he just stayed standing. 2 young guys in drywall clothes at the back put their forks down. An older woman by the register said out loud to nobody, "Oh my God." And Dana, who had been standing by the coffee station with the pot in her hand that entire time, set it down on the burner very carefully, like it might go off, and walked straight past Kyle Brenner without looking at him and pushed through the swinging door into the kitchen. 20 seconds later, Ed Halloran came out. Ed's 76, and he does the books in the back office now, and he comes out front maybe twice a service. He had his glasses up on his head and a pen in his shirt pocket, and he came through that door already talking. Kyle, what in the hell is going on out?" Then he saw me, standing in the middle of his floor with my coat on the tile and my face wet and 12 people around me. "Ray, Ed and I have known each other since we were both in our 30s, in the way you know a man whose counter you have sat at 400 times. He does not know my middle name. He knows how I take my coffee, and he knew my wife's name, and he came to her service and stood in the back, and that is its own kind of knowing, and I'd argue it's not the small kind." "Ray, what happened?" I didn't answer. I couldn't have. Dana did. She had come out behind him and she was shaking, and she did it anyway. "Kyle threw him out," she said. "Ed, he threw him out. He'd paid. His money's still on the table. It's sitting right there. And Kyle told him paying customers were uncomfortable and pointed at the door." Ed turned around slow. "That true?" Brenner had his hands out. "Ed, we've had complaints about loitering. I've been trying to That's not what I asked you. Is it true? I was trying to protect the Kyle." Ed's voice didn't go up. That's how I knew how bad it was. In 30 years, I have never heard that man raise his voice, and I have heard him mad plenty. "Is it true?" And Kyle Brenner stopped talking. Dana wasn't finished. "And it's not the first time," she said. "Ed, It's the third time in 3 weeks. He did it to that kid from the group home on Tuesdays, the one who colors on the placemats. He did it to the man with the shopping cart who buys a roll every morning, and I didn't say anything either of those times, and I'm saying it now. People love that part when they tell it back to me. I've never much cared for it. Kyle Brenner did not get what he had coming to him because 12 people stood up. 12 people standing up only meant there were witnesses. He got what he had coming because he had been doing a thing for 3 weeks in a building that belonged to somebody else. And on the one afternoon, he did it where it couldn't be smoothed over. The person who had been keeping quiet about it stopped keeping quiet. That's all that happened. Nobody destroyed him. Somebody just stopped standing between him and the size of what he'd been doing. Ed took his glasses off his head and folded them and held them. Go on back and clock out, he said. We'll talk tomorrow at 9. Tomorrow at 9, Kyle. And Brenner stood there in front of the whole room. And I'll give him this much. And it's not nothing. He turned around and he looked at me and his face had come apart. Sir, he said. He stopped. He tried it again. I didn't know. And I said the thing that has caused me more arguments in this town than anything else I've ever said. I said, you shouldn't have to. He blinked at me. You didn't know who I was, I said. Fine. Nobody in here knew who I was, including me, for about the last 20 years. But I want you to hear this, and then I'm done with it, son. If the only thing that stops you is finding out a man's got a medal in a drawer, then you haven't fixed anything. You've just gotten luckier. There's a fella comes in here every morning and buys a roll, and he hasn't got a medal. And he was sitting where I was sitting, and there was nobody at the window table for him. He didn't answer. He went in the back. Ed let him go, and Ed did let him go. The next morning at 9, and I found that out later, and I did not celebrate it, and I don't now. He's got kids. I hope he found something. I hope more than that. I hope somebody made him say out loud what he'd been doing on that floor for 3 weeks, because a man who never has to say it just carries it to the next building. Ed picked my coat up off the tile himself. 76 years old, both knees shot. He went down and got it, and he shook it out, and he handed it to me with both hands like he was handing over something at a ceremony. Ray, he said, in 30 years you never told me one word about any of this. There wasn't anything to say, Ed. Well, he said, and he looked at the long table by the window, at the 12 people, and the flag and the picture standing up on the cloth. Seems like there was. Nora Kessler put her hand on my sleeve. Sergeant Hale, she said, there's a seat. And I looked over there, and I finally understood what I'd been looking at since 1 o'clock. 13 chairs. 12 people. One place set at the end with the silverware squared and a water glass filled, and a plate of food nobody was ever going to eat. And beside it, propped against the salt shaker, a small folded card. I'd assumed it was for Kessler. It wasn't. Kessler's place was the flag, in the middle, where everyone could reach it. The card of the empty chair had a name written on it in slanted blue ballpoint, the same slanted ballpoint that had been coming back to a post office box on Warren Street with pencil on the front of the envelope for 19 years. They had set that chair every year for 21 years in a drill hall that is going to be storage units for a man who wrote return to sender and told himself he was being decent. I'd like to tell you I said something worth writing down. What I did was, I walked over there and I stood behind that chair with my hands on the back of it for a while, and I pulled it out and I sat down. Vasquez sat, then Prosser, then Dupree, all the way down the line, in about the same order they'd stood up, and the sound of 12 chairs coming in under 12 people at the same time is a sound I expect I'll be hearing when I'm dying. Nora turned her father's picture so it faced the whole table. Somebody said, yeah, very quietly, the way men do instead of saying anything real. And then, because it had been sitting there for 20 minutes getting cold, and because there is no ceremony in the world that survives contact with a Tuesday, Charlene Dupree looked down at her plate and said, Doc's gonna need this reheated, and the entire table came apart laughing. 12 grown people laughing with their faces wet, and Dana was already coming with the pot. They put my coffee in front of me, fresh cup, and Dana set down a slice of cherry pie beside it, and when I reached for my pocket, she put 2 fingers on my wrist and said, Mr. Hale, don't you dare. And Ed Halloran said from behind the counter, his father wouldn't let anybody pay for the pie either. They eat first, and then they say the names. That's the order. I know it now because I've done it 3 times since, and I'll do it again this April, and I will be the one who gets there early to help push the tables together, because that is what you do when they've kept your chair. That afternoon, we sat in that restaurant until 4:45. I heard about Vasquez's granddaughter, who is 4 and has decided she is a horse. I heard about Prosser's boy going to Bowling Green. I found out Dupree became a nurse because of that ditch and has been at Mercy for 18 years, and that she still cannot stand the smell of diesel and never will. And when the plates were cleared, they said the names, and there was only one, and Nora said it, and I got to sit in a chair with my hands on a table and hear a 5-year-old girl grown up say her father's name out loud in a room where everybody knew what it cost. I'm not going to tell you I'm fixed. That's not how any of this works, and I've got no patience for the version where the old man gets thanked and sleeps fine after. I still wake up at 5. I still don't know, and I will never know, whether the man I was that night went right because it was the only door or because it was the easier one. That question is going in the ground with me. But something did change, and I can name it. I used to think that carrying it alone was the loyal thing. I thought if I sat down at that table, I'd be taking something that belonged to a man who couldn't come. It took a girl in a gray cardigan to point out that I'd had it backwards for 22 years. Nobody at that table was asking me to feel better. They were asking me to be in the room. Those are different things, and I'd spent 2 decades refusing the second one because I couldn't manage the first. There's the other part, and I'd be a coward to leave it out. For 4 minutes on the 9th of April, I was a man in a bad coat being pointed at a door, and 40 decent people watched it happen, and none of them moved. And I have never blamed one of them because I know what that feels like from the inside. Everyone in that room was waiting to see if it was really happening. The only reason it stopped is that 12 people at a window table happened to know what I used to be. I think about the fella who buys a roll every morning. Nobody knows what he used to be. He might have been anything. Most likely he was somebody's kid, which ought to be enough. And in this country, it very often is not. So if you take one thing out of this, don't let it be that you should be kinder to old men in worn-out coats in case one of them turns out to have a citation in a drawer. That's not the lesson. That's just a better class of the same mistake. The lesson is that a man is not worth what his cuffs say he's worth, and you will almost never find out in time. Halloran's is still on the corner of 3rd and Warren, green awning. The letters on the sign have gotten fat. There's a long table by the window that seats 13. If you've got somebody in your life who's been sending letters back, a father, a brother, an old friend who went quiet, send one more this year. I sent 19 of them back, and it took a stranger's daughter to make me open the 20th. Somebody out there is sitting 60 feet away from the table they belong at, and they will not come on their own. And if this found you at the right time, pass it to the person it made you think of. That's all. That's the whole ask.